Makanda to give us a short introduction. As far as the teaching of science and technology is concerned. Vitalis, kindly take us on as we wait for Naomi and Emmanuel to join us.
Thank you, Madam. Our viewers and my fellow panelists, good morning. So science as a subject, because formerly in the other curriculum it was known as science, but this time it is what we call a science and technology, meaning that it's a subject that you have to teach, and then you teach, and then you apply in our day-to-day life. So it entails so many activities whereby by this time you allow only the learners to do 3/4 of the work as you just guide them, and then they do. Thereafter, assessment, as you know very well, it was done once, or that was terminal, but this time it is done in class, or if you are in outdoor activity, it's done at the same time. So that's why it's known as the science and technology, which is done by learners as you assess. So, Madam, I think for the introduction, I think that's the best, as I'll come in about assessment, because I'll come in about assessment, how you can assess the learners when you have already done the lesson or after going for an activity. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vitalis, for that short introduction. We are giving our panelists, Naomi. Naomi, are you ready? We can see they have arrived. Naomi and Emmanuel have arrived. So they are going to take us through how to teach science and technology. They're going to take us through the methodology of teaching science and technology. Naomi, Emmanuel, kindly put on your videos. Very good, Emmanuel. So Naomi and Emmanuel are going to take us through teaching methodology, science and technology. And basically they're going to handle two methods today. That is teaching by demonstration and teaching by experimentation. Those are two key methods that are used in teaching science and technology. Then later on, they will take us through formative assessment before Mr. Makanda takes us through summative assessment as far as CBC is concerned. And under summative assessment, we shall be taken through how to prepare authentic tasks in the CBA way. And that is how the Ministry of Education and NEC are going to assess learners in grade 4, 5, and 6. So our dear teachers, viewers, and other listeners, we really request that you stay with us to the very end of it. So let me see whether Naomi is ready, because she's supposed to be our first presenter. Naomi, can you hear me? Okay. As Naomi is setting up because of let us give Mr. Awire the opportunity to take us through teaching science and technology via experimentation method. Mr. Awire, kindly take up and help us understand how we can use experimentation to teach science and technology.
Okay, thank you, Naima and the team from Moran. I believe I'm loud and clear. Kindly confirm.
Yes, you are.
Okay, from my side, I can see there's a breaking. I'll still continue. So thank you, our dear viewers. My name is Emmanuel Awire, and I'm humbled specifically experimentation. So I'm going to share a slide, and this is just a continuation from the previous webinar that we had some few weeks ago. And remember, when we had that webinar, I talked about the approach of delivering a lesson in class. And I remember I talked about the 5E model of delivery. And the 5E model of delivery, if we can remember for those who are in, I talked about one, that we need to engage our learners, and the engagement will come as introduction. So how do we engage our learners? We engage our learners through a question. We pose a question to the class, let them do research as we prepare them for the next phase, which is explore. Now, under explore, I said that it's hands-on activities, and my presentation actually is going to deal with the experimentation, where the learners are going to practically work on an activity, and then at the end of the day, they'll make their conclusion. Then once they have done explore, they'll now need to explain. Maybe they'll be doing that work in groups, so you will ask them to explain what they have done. And in the explanation, they'll be also talking about the conclusions they have made as you guide them. Then once they have explained, they'll need to now elaborate. They find more on what they have just done. Okay? Then from there, you need now to evaluate. And this evaluation is two-way. It is the learners to give the teacher the feedback. And how the learners give the teacher the feedback? When they're explaining what they have done, the teacher will be able to note that indeed they have grasped the concept. And if not, then the teacher will have to engage them again. So allow me to share the slides. Sorry. Sorry, Naima. Am I off or I'm still on? Kindly confirm, Naima.
Your audio is on, and you're also visible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm going to share.
Okay. Share your slides.
I'm going to share the slides. Just a minute. Okay, kindly confirm if the slides are clear so that we proceed.
Yes, Emmanuel, the slides are clear.
Thank you. So, dear viewers, teaching, and my approach will be a case study of learning outcome that is in grade 5 book, and that is assets and bases. So that is the case study I'm going to share with you. Now, to start with, the learning outcome is by the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to use litmus paper to identify an asset and learning outcome that we're going to deal with. Now, how do we approach this? Here, the skill that is the litmus paper. So when the learners will be engaged in this experiment, the role of the teacher will be to assess the learners, how they're going to use the litmus paper. Of course, we have assessment method that I'm going to share with you later in the slide. So this one, the materials that you need, the teacher has to prepare them in good time. And as you can see from the slide number 1, number 2, the learners need to have litmus paper, both blue and red. They need to have test tubes, because there are some schools that do not have the test tubes. So it is the teacher, upon the teacher to improvise and bring in apparatus that are available. That's why I mentioned bottle tops. Then they require freshly squeezed lemon juice and then wood ash solution. So these are the items that the teacher needed to provide prior to the lesson. And I want to say that once you have these materials, the teacher needs to carry out the experiment again prior to the lesson, so that by the time the learners are working out, the teacher already has the observations and the conclusions if the material are going to work. Then, this is the approach of the activity 1. So we want the learners to use the litmus paper to identify acids and bases. So the first thing, remember the 5E model of delivering content, engage. So how do we engage the learners in this particular activity? So the teacher is going to pose some questions. These are oral questions. For all liquids water, because most of the liquids may appear colorless and they may be the same as water. So we are asking these learners, are all liquids water? Are all substances the same? So these are the questions we're going to pose to them so that they discuss in their groups and give the feedback. Okay? So we are giving the learners an opportunity to share what they already know in their groups about the liquids and the substances. Okay? Then make learners also aware, because these are practical and we are dealing with the chemicals, learners should be aware of safety precautions. And this one should be well stipulated before the activity. They must understand that some of these liquids you are talking about, you need not to test them using your tongue, or you need not to handle them bare hands. Those are the precautions that you need the learners to get in advance. Then once you've given them the safety precautions, then allow them to brainstorm now on the questions you've given them. Okay? And because you are talking about acids and bases, these learners have never heard of these terms. And maybe if they have heard of these terms, they don't know. So we are guiding them to discover what an acid, what is a base. And that's why, together with the questions you pose there, you also allow them to brainstorm on the meaning and the examples of acids and bases. By doing so, you've engaged them. So once they have done this, you can further engage them. Like, for example, here, I've prepared a poem. You can allow them to go through this poem because they don't know what an acid, what is a base. This is the first time they're encountering this. So when they go through this poem, they'll have an idea, though not practically, but they'll have an idea what an acid is, what is a litmus paper, because they're going to use litmus paper to identify between an acid and a base. Just look at the poem. A litmus paper. It's a strip of colored paper. It can be red or blue. Litmus paper. Many solutions around me. I dip red or blue to know the difference. In one solution, blue litmus paper turns red. It's an acid. I've concluded. In another, red litmus paper turns blue. It's a base. litmus paper, red or blue, not just a paper. So already when they read through this poem, they have already understood that this litmus paper is not just an ordinary paper. It has a purpose to identify between an acid and a base. All this, we are still on the stage of engaging the learners. We are preparing these learners for a hands-on activity. Now, once we prepare them for the hands-on activity, now we give them a chance to explore. And this explore, they're going to work in groups. Already, we've given them materials. Now we want to give them what to do, the procedure, kind of. Now, the first one, you will let them arrange 4 test tubes. These are the instructions now you are giving the learners. Let them arrange 4 test tubes in a test tube rack. Remember, I said, in case there are no test tubes in that particular school, the teacher is to improvise and let the learners use the bottle tops or any other small containers that can be fit for this particular experiment. So here, the learners must label first. So they have arranged the 4 test tubes and then ask them to label those 4 test tubes. So we have test tube 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this test tube 1, 2, 3, and 4, they must be labeled 1, freshly squeezed juice, freshly squeezed lemon juice, wood ash, and then 4 wood ash. Remember, there are 4 test tubes, but test tube 1 and 2, they have similar content, similar solution, which is lemon juice. Test tube 3 and 4, they have wood ash. So once they have done that labeling and they have arranged them on a bench or in a place where they're working, then we give them the second instruction, the way it's appearing on my slide. So they need to pour equal amounts of freshly squeezed lemon juice into test tube 1. So once they have poured equal amounts of freshly squeezed lemon juice into test tube 1, they now need to use the litmus paper and dip the red litmus paper into test tube 1. Once they have dipped, they need to record their observation. Clear instructions, one at a time. So they are working on test tube 1 first. And then they observe, and then they record. In my next slide, you will see the table where they're going to record. Because if you give them many activities at once, they'll have issues in the recording and they can easily confuse. So let the learners handle each of the test tubes separately at a time. Now, step number 4, sorry, they dip now a blue litmus paper into test tube number 2. And remember, test tube number 1 and 2, they have the same solution, which is lemon juice, and they record the observations. So they'll have seen the behavior of a red litmus paper in that solution. They'll have seen the behavior of a blue litmus paper in the same solution. That one will make them start thinking, why the difference? Then now they go to step 5. They pour equal amounts of wood ash into test tube 3 and 4. They repeat the same procedure. In test tube 3, they dip in a red litmus paper. Remove, record, observation. In test tube 4, they dip in a blue litmus paper. Remove, record, observation. So at the end of the experiment, they have worked on 4 test tubes, one at a time, to avoid confusion. Now, once they have done that, the next slide is where now they're going to record. And remember, recording is a skill, is a scientific skill, very crucial in this particular activity. They record what they have observed. So the table is very clear there. They record the red litmus paper in lemon juice, which color they observe. They'll record the blue litmus paper in lemon juice, which color they observed, and so forth. Then they'll go to the wood ash solution, they'll still do the same thing. So once they have recorded this, now, and remember, as they are engaging, as they are recording this and observing, the teacher, I'm going to talk about the checklist, observation checklist at the end of the lesson. The teacher needs to be checking, moving around the groups and check, are they doing the right thing? Is Emmanuel Awire doing the right thing? Is Emmanuel Awire doing the right thing? Is he able, is she able to use litmus paper to identify an acid from a base? Then once they have done that, now it is explained. Remember, this activity is purely done by the learners. The role of the teacher here is just to guide where they're going wrong. You guide and ensuring that they are taking safety precautions. So once they have done hands-on, they need to share out the information they have gotten from the experiment. So how do they share the information? How do they explain the information? Because they were working in groups, each group should present, but of course under the guidance of the teacher. Maybe they can agree a member in a group to present on behalf of others. And as they are presenting, ensure you guide them. In their presentation, one, they have to present the table they have recorded. And number two, they have to suggest the meaning of an acid and a base. Now that you had engaged them through the poem, through the introductory questions, and they have done the activity, they should be able now at least to suggest the meaning of an acid and a base using litmus paper. So in the explanation, allow them to take you through the table, and then they suggest the meaning of an acid and a base. And as they are doing that, your checklist, you're also marking or ticking to see if they have the correct information. And be noting down those learners from particular group that didn't get it right. Make sure that you record. Practical again. So once they have explained under your guidance, now they need to elaborate. Is the fourth E. Now in elaborating here, maybe now you'll allow them, you'll give them more substances, liquids to practice, to identify them. Which one are acids and which ones are bases. So you're engaging them further to use the knowledge they have gained in the hands-on activity to further classify other commonly used substances. It could be in school or at home. Okay, so that's elaborate. Then we move to the last E, evaluate. Very crucial. And maybe I want to mention this. This evaluate, it is coming as number 5 years, but evaluation is continuous. From the time you are engaging these learners, you are evaluating them, okay? When they are presenting, they are evaluating themselves. Because they are presenting information they have gathered from the experiment. So they are proving to the teacher that indeed we understood or we didn't understand. So evaluation is ongoing throughout their lesson. Now here, I've said that when you are evaluating here, the learners need to provide that evidence of the understanding. And that's why I've said this evidence can only be provided through them explaining to the rest of the class. Okay? And then also, through evaluation, the teacher is able to get the feedback from the learners as they present, whether they grasp the concept or they didn't grasp the concept. Now, having said that, maybe assessment methods. Because in our previous webinar, we talked about assessment methods and assessment tools. So in this particular hands-on activity, this particular learning outcome, where we're using experimentation method, what are the suitable assessment methods? Number one, a written group presentation. So as they're explaining, they are presenting what they have done in their groups. That's an assessment method. From there, if that particular group, if particular learners in that group understood the concept or were able to use the litmus paper to identify between an acid and a base. Oral questions and answers. This is an assessment method. Remember, there's a slide where you have to pose questions. I say the meaning of a base and an acid. So as they have done everything they have recorded, then they are presented, you ask those questions orally, just to gauge and see how these learners understood how to use the litmus paper to identify between an acid and a base. Practical work is an assessment method for this particular learning outcome. How? This practical work, now when you're assessing these learners, maybe there's a group that did not use the litmus paper properly to identify between an acid and a base. So you need to identify that group and give them a practical work they needed to redo. That's why now that assessment method of practical work comes in. And then individual written tests. This one you can pose 2 questions or 3 questions on the board and let each learner write the answers to the question. And the question is simple from the learning outcome. What is an acid? What is a base? To define a base and acid using litmus paper, because that's the only thing they have used, and that is a property. So maybe they say an acid is a substance or a liquid that turns the blue litmus paper to red. That's a perfect answer. At that level, that is the definition of an acid. And a base, they'll say, is a liquid or a substance that turns a red litmus paper to blue. They have answered that. And of course, you use the assessment tools to check if they have gotten it right. Then assessment tools, of course, we're going, the teacher will be using observation. I'm going to share with you samples and assessment rubric. Those are the suitable assessment tools for this particular experimentation method. Now, there's a sample checklist here that I've prepared, and you can see this sample checklist is actually insisting on if the learner have understood the skill. The skill in this particular learning outcome is to using litmus paper to identify acids and bases. That's the skill. Okay, so this sample checklist will apply to all the learners in your class. Here, I've given an example of a learner by the name Emmanuel Awire. So you check, is Emmanuel Awire able to use litmus paper to identify acids and bases? If well mastered, you tick. If needs practice, you tick. Okay, so that at the end of the day, you'll have known how many students by name, those that understood the concept, or those that needs to practice further. And maybe you can now bring in peer teaching. Those who understood, those who mastered the concept very well, you can use them to peer teach. Okay, if time allows, depending on your arrangement of the lesson, you can use them to peer teach. Those who need practice, that's where now we go back to method of assessment. You give them another practical on the same, so that they need to practice on the same. Then finally, this is another sample checklist, where now we are using, we are looking at other aspects other than the using of litmus paper. We have PCIs there that you need also to assess as they are doing their work in group. And that's why I've given that key there, like respect. Is Emmanuel Awire respecting others in that particular group? Okay, is he showing unity? Is Emmanuel Awire using the materials or liquids given to them economically, or they're misusing, or they're just pouring on the desks? Is Emmanuel Awire responsible in that particular group? Is Emmanuel Awire observing safety precautions? Is Emmanuel Awire able to communicate and to collaborate with the rest? So you have that checklist. And this one should apply to every learner, so that at the end of the day, you can score and have a record of what they have done. So that is my last slide. And I want to say that in case of any clarification or a question on this, I believe Naomi and Naima, who is our moderator, has been capturing those questions. Thank you, our dear teachers and viewers. Asante sana.
Thank you so much, Mr. Emmanuel, for that wonderful presentation. As Emmanuel was making his remarks, I just identified 2 or 3 things from what he has told us. That every concept we teach to the learner, it's either addressing the cognitive domain, that is where knowledge and understanding dwells. It is either developing a skill, that is addressing the skill domain, whereby learners are supposed to do 1 or 2 things to be engaged in the activity. And that is where experimentation came in. And he has taken us through how we can help the learners to use the litmus paper to identify bases and acids. And then there is this quiet and silent thing, the affective domain. You have to ask yourself, why should learners be able to identify acids and bases? Why should I know that this is an acid, this is a base? You know, it will enable me know how to handle different materials that are found in my environment. That is the affective domain, and many teachers will forget to bring that to the fore. Why should I know that lemon juice or lemon is an acid? Why is ash a base, and so on? So thank you so much even for bringing to the fore the various assessment tools. You realize that in most cases, the skill domain will be assessed using an observation and observation checklist most of the time, because you have to observe how that learner is doing that activity. And in many cases, teachers, the cognitive domain will need a rubric, yeah, or a written test for you to be able to assess or to measure how much that learner knows or understands. So at that juncture, I want to thank Mr. Awire so much, as I request our viewers, listeners, teachers who have attended this webinar to send in their questions. And also, I can see most of you are requesting for the slides. Kindly give us your email address on info@moranpublishers.co.ke, and we shall share with you the slides at the right time. Share your email address with us on info@moranpublishers.co.ke, and we shall share with you our slides. And through that email, we shall continue talking to one another and engaging one another in one way or another. Our panelists are always available to respond to you. At this juncture, I would like to give Naomi Bosbori an opportunity to take us through another very common method of teaching science and technology, and this is teaching by demonstration. She will take us through how to use that method to deliver a lesson, and also how to assess the learners after presenting that lesson or during presentation of the lesson, because we are told in CBC presentation or CBC teaching and learning, assessment takes place all the time. So Naomi, welcome and talk to us.
Morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm going to take you through the method of teaching, that is by demonstration. And I'm going to use the grade 5 substrand, that is handling data, and that is word processing. So I'm going to share some slides and I'm going to elaborate on how a teacher will go through this process of teaching, that is teaching by demonstration, so that at the end of it all, the learning outcomes are met. If you can remember our last webinar, we shared different methods of teaching. So this was one of them. As I'm sharing the screens, I want us to remember what we emphasized then. And we said that each teaching method always has an assessment tool that goes with it. So I'm going to take you through step by step, and at the end of it all, we are going to assess the lesson. So I don't know if you can see the shared screens. Naima?
It is still opening. Okay. Center it so that we can view it well. Close the taskbar on your right-hand side so that the screen can be more visible.
You can be able to see them well now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to take you through a lesson that is on handling data, that is word processing. And this is a strand in grade 5. The learning outcome I'm going to address is that by the end of the lesson, the learner should be able to create a Word document. In grade 4, these learners did the hardware part of the computer. Those are the parts of a computing device. And now as they come to grade 5, they are going to use the first software, which will be the word processor. So first of all, before we do this lesson, we are going to do a recap of what they did in grade 4 and link it to what they are going to do in grade 5. In grade 4, they also did coding. And the basic of the coding that they did in grade 4 was identifying common patterns in their locality. So as they do the word processing as the first software they are handling in grade 5, we will need them to understand that apart from the computer, the hardware, the parts that they did in grade 4, they must know how they are used for them to use the word processor. So as you introduce this learning outcome, that by the end of this lesson, the learner should be able to create a Word document, start from what they know to what they don't know. What they know the parts of the computer. So as they start this, they will need you, first of all, to tell them maybe what is a Word document. So what you're going to do as you engage learners in this lesson, as you can see in the first slide, you're going to introduce the lesson by showing learners samples of products that have been made by word processing. For example, we'll have a newspaper. You can have a news bulletin, the ones that are sometimes given in church or in school. We are going to have a newsletter. We are going to have a brochure, a greetings card, among others. You'll choose what is available within your reach so that you can use this to engage the learners. So once you present these products that have been made using the word processor, you're going to have learners brainstorm on how these documents were created. For example, if it is the newspaper, they are going to see how the words are spaced. They are going to have digits. They are going to have, at some point, pictures. So they will tell you that there has to be some software in a computer that was used to create these documents. And now you will move on to the next step, which is going to be exploration. During exploration, because this is the point at which you want learners to start interacting with the computing device, So it means you're going to link up what they did in grade 4. Those are the computer hardware, the parts of a computing device, to now this software, which is the word processor that you want them to interact with. So you are going to ask the learners to distinguish between the computer hardware and the computer software. Simply the things that they will touch in a computing device and the things that they are going to use. As you know, the softwares will be the applications that have been put inside the computing device to allow the user to use the computing device. Then they will go ahead now, like I move into the software and open a word processor. So as they open this word processor, this being a demonstration that you want to teach by demonstration, it means you're the one who is going to guide. That's why I'm using that word there, to guide. So in the process of you guiding, it means you're going to access the word processor and guide learners on how to create the document. But before you guide them on creating, then you must help the learners to identify the parts of a word processor and then how they are going to use these words of a word processor to create a Word document. So let me take you through the steps, but maybe before I do that, we can look at the next screen. I hope you can see it. I opened a word processor, and now we have parts of the word processor that learners will need to know their functions so that they can use these parts of the word processor to create a Word document. So the moment you will open the processor, there are those parts that you're going to see. There is that ribbon up there that has what the learners are going to use to like feed into the working space. And then we have the web. Let me first hope that you can be able to see that. We have the web layout and the print layout and the read mode. These are simply the way a learner will view the document that they are going to create the Word document on. We are going to do this together. So I first want you to look at the basic parts of this word processor. The moment you know the basic ones, then we can be able to use them. So now let me share a new screen that I'm going to do the demonstration to prepare myself or to guide the learners to create the Word document. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing on the screen.
Still opening. Not yet visible.
It's supposed to be the Word document that is opening. Can you be able to see a blank document?
Not yet.
And now?
Okay. Now close the slide so that we can see what you have shown us.
Okay,
close the previous slide.
I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm saying that you close the previous slide so that you can show us the current one. We can see it. Can you hear me, Naomi?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yes.
Now you can see the new screen.
Yes, enlarge it.
Okay, so I'm demonstrating to my learners before they can be able to create a Word document on their own. So I'm doing the demonstration. So now we have the workspace that we have opened, but before my learners get to interact with this workspace and create a Word document, I'll want them to identify the parts that, or what they need to use to create the Word document. So I will take them through the screen and make them understand the role of what they can be able to see. For example, if they will want to change the font type, they will click there and change the font type. If they want to change the font size, they will click there to change it. Remember, at this level, what they'll be required to do is write digits. They are going to write letters, and from the letters, they can be able to write names. And from the digits, they can also be able to write numbers. So we are going to emphasize on like doing the basics, because this is their first stage at which they are going to handle the Word document. So as we progress, that's the time you will maybe be able to use the rest of the features that are shown in the ribbon or in the tools bar. So we can key in at this stage, you will need to help them to identify the letters and position of these letters in the keyboard. So you are going to give them a chance to practice, to type in the digits and the letters to make the words and the numbers. So at this stage, then we can move to the next level of learning. Now that is going to be explanation, meaning I've already demonstrated and I've done some little explanation. Now I want them to explore this on their own before we move to the explanation where they will explain what they did. So at this stage, I'll move back to my previous screen. So this is where we were. Let me share the screen where we had reached. We were at exploration, where as the teacher, I was going to guide the learners to identify features of a computing device. And we have done that. Then I was to guide them to identify parts of a word processor. That is what we did. Then demonstrate to the learners how to create a Word document. And in the process of demonstration, you must tell them where to find the Word document in a computing device. During the demonstration, you saw I typed at the search bar for the word for me to access the word processor. If you don't want to type at the search bar, then you are going to double click on the screen, then you'll find the new document and the learners are going to be there. So at that point, then you will lead them now to create a Word document, still under Explore. Then after they have now created the Word documents in their own groups, you are going to have them do a presentation on how they created their Word document. And remember I said, during the process of them creating the Word document or identifying the parts of a word processor and the keyboard, you will be there to see that they are identifying the parts of the word processor and using them right now as they create the Word document. Then you are going to let them explain through maybe their group leaders how they created their Word documents, the challenges that they encountered, and then how they solved them. You will move to the next E of learning, that is elaborate. You are going to have now learners tell you maybe ways in which in their own groups they created the Word documents to deepen their skills. Like I mentioned during the demonstration, there are those maybe who searched for the Word document under the search bar, or there are those maybe who double clicked on the screen to reach the Word document for them to identify the Word document and then create a Word document from it. So they are going to share the different ways that they created these Word documents. And because I know the different groups are going to have different ways of doing this, then in the process of them elaborating how they created their Word documents, they are going to sharpen their skills of creating these Word documents. Okay, then we'll move next to the stage of evaluation. So as learners were creating these Word documents, and during the explanations, there is a need for us to evaluate. So the learners during maybe their presentations, they are going to identify a group that did their best or created a Word document, maybe using the simplest method. Then from there, the rest of the class is going to emulate them or copy this skill from them. Then at this point, as the teacher, you're going to carry out the process of evaluation. And the method that you're going to use, because they were doing this work in group work, you might decide to let each learner create their own Word document, then you are going to assess the skill. In this learning outcome, what you're assessing is the skill. So it means at some point, even if the learners are working in groups, you're going to let each learner carry out or make their Word in turns, so that you will ultimately conclude that the learners were able to create the Word document. So the assessment methods that you can decide to use when learners when you're teaching this learning outcome of creating a Word document, you can ask learners through a written test to write down maybe the steps that they carry out to create a Word document. Then from this written test, you can have a rubric at the end of it all to identify if the learners were able to write the right steps that can be used to create a Word document. The method number 2 that you can use to assess will be the class presentation. If learners created a Word document in groups, during the class presentations, they are going to do the presentations maybe through their group leader. And as they do the presentations, you're going to have these other learners peer assess. Now you're going to use the peer assessment form for learners to assess how one group created their Word document, and then they will identify maybe the weaknesses of that group and allow the group to change them. In places where maybe you can be able to access a projector, it means this group leader can be able to even demonstrate as the rest of the class is observing how their group created a Word document. So the peer assessment here will come in because each group is going to assess the work of the other group during the class presentation. So the method of assessment here is going to be class presentation, and the method that the tool of assessment you can use can be the peer assessment form, such that as each group presents their work on how they created a Word document, the other group is assessing them. Then you're going to use practical work as a method of assessing if learners can be able to create a Word document. And the practical work here, you're going to provide a computing device and allow a learner to search for the word processor and create a Word document. So as they are doing this, you're going to have an observation checklist or a checklist that you're going to check that the learner can be able to create the Word document. Then we have oral questions and answers. You can ask questions orally. How can we create a Word document? Or what is a Word document? How can we create it? Then learners are going to give you the answers orally. Then you can also do a gallery walk as a method of assessment. This will come in if learners have worked in groups. So you will move from one group to another, assessing how they created their Word document. And as you're moving around checking how they created their Word document, of course, you'll be asking questions and you'll be having a checklist that you will be ticking on. So the slides that you can be able to see is a summary of what I've been saying, the sample assessment method. When you're using the individual performance written test, it means at the end of it all, you're going to have a rubric to gauge that each learner can be able to create a Word document. And these are the assessment tools that I've given you a summary on. The one I've not mentioned here was the rating card. When you're using the rating scale, when you're using the assessment rubric, you can use the rating scale, because in the assessment rubric, we are going to have those ones that are exceeding and those ones that are approaching, those ones who are meeting, and maybe those ones who are below. So when you're using the rating scale, it will go together with the assessment rubric, and it will help you now to tell which learner needs to redo this skill, because if you're creating, it means it is a skill that the learner needs to know. And if they need to know, then you need to rate them. Maybe this one has mastered the skill so well till they can peer teach others. This one needs to like recreate or do more practice when it comes to creating Word document, because in this learning outcome, in this not learning outcome, but in this substrand, they are going to move from creating a Word document to saving the Word document. So it means if they get lost during the first skill, then you cannot be able to progress. So you need to rate the learners as you assess to know which learners need to repeat this skill, because we cannot move on to the next skill in this substrand if they have not mastered the first one. So finally, I have a sample of a checklist that you can use as these learners, as you're assessing these learners, for you to confirm that you can move on to the next learning outcome. This substrand, the whole of it, requires demonstration, because in the next substrand where you're going to do the coding, and in this grade 5 where they're using the Scratch program to create games, to create animations, if they'll not have mastered the basic, which is the word processor here, then it will be hard for you to move to the next substrand. So that's why when you create a checklist, you're going to personalize it for each learner, such that if the skill of creating a Word document has been mastered by each of the learners, then it means as we move on, we move on to the next learning outcome, where they will need to create a Word document. If there are any errors or any modifications they'll want to create on this Word document, they will edit it, and after they have edited it, they can be able to save it, and after they have saved it, they can be able to retrieve it from wherever they have saved it. So this first learning outcome lays a basis to the subsequent learning outcomes. So for it to be mastered well by the learner, this checklist is very important, because it will help you assess the achievement, how the skill has been mastered by each of your learners. And if there are those who have achieved it or have mastered it very well, then they can be able to peer teach others even before they move on to the next learning outcome. So with that, I think I'll come to the end of the teaching method by demonstration. So as a teacher, when you're having such methods of teaching, it means yourself, you need to be prepared, or you need to practice early enough. Identify the computing devices that are available in your locality or that you're going to use to teach the learners. Use them so that during the process of demonstration, you'll find it very easy, because there are those learners, maybe you have already interacted with these devices and they will be knowing what they are going to do. So it will be good that you interact with the device, and if you have a problem, you sort it yourself before you get to teach this lesson. So this learning outcome, this substrand and the next will need demonstration. So as a teacher, prepare early enough, do the demonstrations on your own so that you equally master the skill before you can be able to transfer it to the learners. And if you are not going to transfer it to the learners, so that you can be able to guide the learners to master the skill. Okay, thank you, Naima.
Thank you so much, Naomi, for that wonderful presentation. I know so far our teachers have learned one or two things about the two methods of teaching that we have put across, that is experimentation and demonstration. And I just want to attend to two questions that have been asked by our audience today. The first one, I believe it was meant for Mr. Awire. The teacher called Kiangwi Isaiah is asking, how will you cater for a child who is visually impaired? I'm sure this question is deliberate because we were testing acids and bases by looking at how the litmus paper changes its color. Mr. Awire, how do you help a learner who is visually impaired? The teacher has used the word visually impaired, so we don't know whether it is a partial impairment, like myself here and Naomi. We are short-sighted, but we have seeing or visual aids, or I don't know whether it is blindness. If it is the latter, then it is our responsibility as teachers to help the parent or guardian of this child who is completely visually impaired to be taken to the right institution of learning, because that is beyond integration. But let us assume, Mr. Awire, that this is a learner who is partially visually impaired. How can we integrate them in this lesson whereby we are using experimentation? In 1 minute.
Thank you, Naima. That question from Kiagwi, Isaiah, I saw it and I also had that challenge. I don't know whether we were talking about blindness or just an impairment, but let me assume it's just an impairment where this learner is partially impaired in terms of vision. Now, when you check in our teacher's guides, we've elaborated on how to deal with these special cases. So if I have a learner in my class and he has a problem of not seeing properly, one, if the school or if the parents can afford magnifiers, then it means those tools should be provided. However, if you know that this child has a problem, ensure that the sitting position of this child is appropriate so that he or she can make the correct observations. Maybe when they are doing the demonstration, once it's turn of observing, let this learner be on the forefront to observe and even prompt and see if indeed the learner is observing the correct thing you expect as a teacher. So the first duty here is just to single them out and ensure that you cater for them. I think that's my approach. But if it is a total blindness, then the way Naima has said, it will be a special thing, which must be taken to a special learning institution.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Awire. And I'm sure also such learners who might not see change in color easily, we can pair them or put them in a group of other learners who have good vision so that these other learners can explain to them what is happening. Okay, yeah, I'm sure if I were in the classroom, that is what I would do. And then Irene is asking, oh, okay, she is imagining or wondering, a school with no computers. Naomi, how can this technology, part of science and technology, be taught? Because this thing is running right from grade 4 to grade 6. That strand is there and it cannot be wished out. It is already in the curriculum. So how are the teachers or how are the schools that do not have as many computers as the learners enrolled in that class going to teach this strand? Naomi.
Okay, thank you, Naima. For schools that maybe the digital devices are not enough, I'll stick with not enough, because I believe there has to be at least one. That's why I said at the beginning of my lesson that you provide products that have been made using the word processor. And I know you're going to have textbooks, you're going to have newspapers. So the moment learners start with what they know, then they can be able to relate what is not even available. But the fact that this is in the design, I hope that each school can have even one digital device, because in grade 4, it is basic. In grade 5, it is now getting like serious. So there's no way we are going to do this in the absence of a digital device. And that's why I said, as a teacher, identify the digital device that is within your locality. It could be those maybe computers, the ones of early 2000 that maybe are using very old softwares, but I believe still the features are the same. But the fact that this is in the design, it means these are skills that learners need to be imparted with. So try as much as possible and have at least a digital device within your locality.
Okay, thank you, Naomi. And I believe with everything that is happening in the world and with the CBC curriculum here with us, and with the digital literacy being one of the competencies, a school should at least have a computer. And we should share that computer because even in secondary school, we were there, we had one small laboratory, and maybe we were 100 students to carry out our examination or our practicals in that laboratory. We were doing it in shifts. So we are called to be creative and accommodative. And the resources will never be enough most of the time. But now let us leave that to the school administration. We are sure that things will be put in place. Now, in the interest of time, I would like to bring forth Mr. Vitalis Makanda to take us through how to prepare assessment tasks, summative assessment tasks, what we have been calling authentic tasks or scenario-based assessment tasks. Mr. Makanda, kindly, we assume that this is maybe mid-term or end of the term, and the teacher wants to assess the learners on acids and bases. He wants to assess them on what Naomi presented, word processor, and so on. So how should this teacher prepare an assessment tool? Karibu.
Thank you, Madam. My work is very easy at this time because already Mr. Awire, my fellow panelist, has done a lot. Then Madam Naomi also has done a lot. So my work is just to show an example of how you can have that summative assessment. But maybe, Madam, before I go to that one, somebody somewhere maybe may not be aware of what a summative assessment is and which type of assessment do we have and what's an assessment. So we know very well that an assessment is something done by the teacher after already you have taught a lesson or you have taught all the strands, sub-strands, the term has ended. Now you want to know from the learners if they understood what you are teaching or if they got the concept well. And this one can be done using what you call as an assessment method and an assessment tool, the way Madam Naomi put it well. So what's an assessment? An assessment refers to checking what the learners know. Also, the understanding of the learners to the lesson you gave in class or you presented. Also, to know if they acquired the skill you needed for them to acquire. Because with the CBC is to do with what you call understanding, getting skills, getting some values, and also relating with other learning areas. So that's what we call as an assessment. In short, to know if they know what you taught, if they understood, if they acquired the skills that were to get, if they got the attitudes toward the specific learning outcome. Now, when you come to this type of assessment, you find that as a teacher, you must know that we have two types of assessment. We have what you call as the formative assessment, and then we have number two, which we call as summative assessment. What is formative assessment? Formative assessment is done by the teacher during the lesson. As the learners are undertaking the lesson, you have to assess them, not like the one we had in 844. This time you have to assess them step by step. So this one will make you to understand if they understood your lesson or they got the objective, you got the objective well, and if they acquired the skills. This type of assessment, which is formative, can be done either weekly or during the class discussions. In summary, we can say formative assessment is for learning. Let's come to what we call a summative assessment. Summative assessment is now the one we call as either the end of the term or end of the year or end of the course in the learning institution. We can say it's an end of a final, either the project also. Maybe I've given the learners a project to carry out, like now making a cooking fire jiko, or you have given them a work or a project of maybe making a breathing system or modeling the human skeleton. So when you check that one, it's also part of what you call as summative assessment. We cannot say this one entails standardized tests. Maybe I've set a test, or there is Kenya National Examination has set a test to test the learners for the course they have taken in a certain level of learning. What can you say about this? This one, we can say also that in summary, it is now learning, is what you call as learning, having a summary of learning, that is. So let's come, I'll give you a very nice example here of what you call as a summative task or assessment. And I've picked one on what you call as authentic task. Authentic task. This one I've picked from one of the books, which is the best book so far of CBC. That is from grade 4. And I've picked one from Moran Publishers, which is a grade 4 workbook, volume 2. I think if you have such like a book, that's what I'm talking about. And that is from page 63. Page 63, workbook, Moran, volume 2. That is science. I've picked on question 2. The question says about a visit or a visit to a farm in your locality. So as a teacher, if you have to carry out this authentic task, you have several things to put in mind. One, we have what you call as pre-visit. We have what you call as pre-visit. Pre-visit. We have what you call as pre-visit, whereby as a teacher, you have to prepare first a questionnaire with your learners. You have to prepare a questionnaire with your learners. Let me have a slide so that you can have a look. Just a minute.
Vitalis, are you there?
Yes, madam, I'm there.
Okay.
Yes. So, sorry for that delay. I was trying to check so that I can share, correct? That's good. I think we can saw the screen. There's what you call as an authentic task, which is service to the farm in the locality, which I said I picked from the book of Moran, page 63. You can see a teacher should have learners to prepare a questionnaire. And this questionnaire, the teacher will have to go with it when she's going to for a pre-visit to the farm, so that you can give to the farm manager or the farm owner, and also have permission from the farm manager. So as a teacher, you need also to prepare the learners on the items they need to have before they can have such a visit for that authentic task. One, learners should have what you call as the gumboots. Remember, they're going to the farm, and maybe we may have some mud, or we may have some dirty things, and yet they're in the uniform. Two, they need also to have the gloves. They need also to have that questionnaire, which already the teacher has taken to the farm manager after seeking the permission. They need to have a notebook where they'll be recording some items as they'll be going through the farm or around the farm. Then they have a carrier bag. Maybe they need to carry some items from the farm. They need also to have what you call first aid kit. Remember, they're going to the farm and anything may happen, maybe a slight injury, so you can carry out that first aid quickly. They need to have what you call forceps, goggles, a mask. Remember, like now, this time we have what you call the coronavirus. They need to have the mask to have that control. And remember, they have to carry some digital devices like cameras, smartphones, and any other that may be available for the work. They need also to have the cloth, which is the overall cloth, dust coat, or sackcloth, because some regions they may not access what you call the dust coat, or maybe they may not have the required thing, so they can have what you call the sackcloth. Now, you have already now reached or arrived at the farm. What is going to happen? The teacher first, you have to introduce the learners who are already in full gear of gumboots, dust coat, gloves, goggles, and others to the farmer, to the farm manager, and they also introduce themselves. Remember, you may have a class of maybe 60 learners or 40 learners or whichever number. So assuming you have like a big number like 60 or 90, you cannot have one farm manager. You may require more than one, either 2 or 3. So that's why I've said managers, they have to introduce themselves to the learners. After that, the farm managers will have to lead the learners who are already in groups, because if there are 90, you cannot lead them at one place because they may not be able to acquire the skills or whatever they want. So when they are going around, they'll do the following. One, they are going to observe and identify different animals on the farm. Remember, as I told you earlier, as you are taking these learners across, or as the farm manager is taking the learners around the farm, observing and identifying, that one that again relating to another learning area, which is when you classify, that is now science and technology. When they observe, that's still about science. Number two, the learners will have to count the number of animals in that farm and also classify them. Maybe in the farm we have some cows, we have some camels, we have some chicken or poultry, we have some sheep or goats. So they'll have to count how many are they and which type are they. So when they're counting, they're relating science to the learning area, which is called mathematics, because they're counting. Number two, they're classifying. That's again as a learning area called as science and technology. Number three, they'll have to record, because they remember they carry the notebooks. and the writing pen. So as they are recording or writing down the characteristics of each type of animal they have seen, as the farm manager explains, that one also, they are doing what you call as comparing or relating with the learning area you call as science, as well as even social studies, because they are writing characteristics. Then number 4, they'll have to name the type of food eaten by each type of animal. When they name the type of food eaten by each animal, they are comparing or they're relating that area with the learning area you call as agriculture. Because in agriculture, we learn about the type of feed eaten by animals. So those are the things about the type of food eaten as they relate. Number 5, learners also will have to list the products got from each type of animal on the farm. Because like the cows, they may not give the same product, like the sheep or like the goats. Maybe a cow will give milk, will give meat, and even the hides. So they are going to list those things. Still, that one they're relating with the learning area you call as agriculture, as well as social studies. Next one, learners may have some time maybe to draw. Because remember, if they go back to class or to school, they may not have a clear view or a picture of it. As they draw, they are comparing or they're relating that science or learning area with what you call as art and craft. That's why we have the drawing and sketching. Next one, learners also will have to take some pictures. Remember, they carry some digital devices. So they can take some pictures so that when they go at school, they can have to mount in their album or in class. Then which pictures can they take? They can take pictures of food eaten by the animals, the type of animal itself, and the houses of the animals. Because these animals, they don't stay in one particular house. Each animal stays in different type of animals. So that one, as they take pictures, they are now trying to have what you call digital literacy. And then type of houses and different, they may also compare with what you call English. So you learn about different houses of animals. Then lastly, they have to identify the sound produced by each animal observed on the farm. Remember, some learners may come from a place where maybe they have never seen a camel. So once they have seen, they know how it behaves, the sound it produces. Maybe they have never seen a pig, they have never seen a sheep or a cow. So in that manner, they'll have to record down the type of sound produced by each animal. Next one, these learners also, because already they have heard from the farm managers, they have recorded, in their questionnaire, they have now a form which they're going to fill. For instance, we have on the screen there, the animal, then they've named that animal in English, Kiswahili, and if possible, in the vernacular language. Then 2 characteristics of the animal, body, shape, movement, and whatever, type of food eaten, product produced, sound produced, and the type of house. So all those things they have observed, they have recorded, they have done whatever, they'll fill in this form. For instance, we have there the cow, which I gave as an example. We have cow, Kiswahili ng'ombe, character, we have the chewing, then shape, we have the boat shape, block shape, type of food eaten, eat grass, products, we have milk, beef, hides, sound produced, bellowing, type of house, cow shape. Next one, remember, as learners that are in the farm, they have what you call cleanliness and safety. Learners should always observe safety when they are with the teachers. The teacher must ensure we have safety for these learners, because in the farm we may have some animals which are very dangerous, like the donkey, the dogs, turkeys, or whatever that may be fierce. If they're there, they need to take care so they're not injured. 2, after they've done all that in the farm, they have to wash their hands with clean water after the observation and moving around. So, as a teacher or as a parent, if these learners have gone to this task, or this visit to the farm, where are they going to mount or store whatever they collected? This one here, they have to mount these pictures or some samples they got from the farm in what we call as portfolios. Remember, this is an assessment. And then as a teacher, you need to understand that we have 3 types of portfolios. One, we have what we call as case portfolio. Number 2, we have the working portfolio. And then number 3, we have the assessment portfolio. When you talk of working portfolio, start with that number, part 2, working portfolio. That one takes all collected items. Assuming now they're coming from the farm, they have the pictures, they have maybe some animal feed, not in large amount, but that's small samples. They have maybe any other item from the farm. They can mount in what you call as working portfolio. Then from there, they can select the best. Then they put in what you call as case portfolio. That one now you select certain items or pictures, you mount them there. Remember also at the end, we shall have what you call assessment portfolio. Sometimes in our schools, the people from the ministry may come to check how the learning is going on. For example, if they come to the farm, to the school, sorry, the teacher will have to present what you call as assessment portfolio to such officers so that they can see the progress of the learners. Remember also the learners may want to take, or the parents may want to see what the learners have acquired from school. The learners may carry that type of portfolio, which is assessment one, at home so that the parents also may have a look. Then as a teacher, now you are back at school or in class, you need to assess these learners. You need to follow the one, I think you can see on the screen, which is the teacher will assess the learners in groups using the scoring rubric. Using the scoring rubric, I think you can see on the screen. I just give an example. We have what we call the criteria. We have what we call exiting expectation, that's 4 marks. Meeting expectation, that's 3 marks. Approaching expectation, that's 2, and below expectation is 1. I'll give an example, just one. The learner is able to identify animals in English and Swahili. Let's come now to exiting expectation 4. The learner is able to identify all the animals in English, Kiswahili, and if possible, in vernacular, the local language. For example, the cow. The learner is able to name the 3 names, and if possible, another language. That means the learner is now exiting the expectation of the teacher and even the lesson. Next one, meeting experience whereby the learner will only identify animals in English and Swahili. That's now falling in the column or in the part of meeting expectation. Then some learners may have also identified just some animals in English and Swahili, not all. That means the learner is now approaching expectation. And then we may have some learners who will not be able to name those animals in both languages. This means they are assisted to identify those learners, those animals in English and Swahili. So they'll fall in the column of below expectation. As we move further, let's go now to the next one. You now want to follow one individual after the other as you fill in as a teacher. What do? There is that chart there whereby I've given one, for example, there's a pupil by the name Fiani Ruth. This chart, when you come now to filling in those marks, we have now under part A, as you checked in that criteria, part A, you gave that learner 4, which means the learner was able to exceed expectation. Then when you come to part B, which is able to describe character of animals, you gave that animal, or I gave that animal 4, which means the learner was able to describe character of all animals observed. The same learner, you under part C, which is able to name food eaten and the product got from that animal, the learner was given 3, which means 3 will be was able to name just some, not all, some food eaten by the animal and a few products. When you come to part B, under criteria, able to draw the animals observed, the learner was given 4, which means the learner was under exceeding expectation. He was able to draw very well all the animals. Then part E, the last one under the criteria, the learner able to identify the sound produced by the animals observed. 4 means the learner was able to identify the sound produced by all animals on the farm. Lastly, as I summarize, remember CBC is not just like the previous curriculum whereby you are just to tell the learner and you live as a teacher. Here, 1, we have what you call the competencies that the learners are expected to develop. For example, we have what you call the critical thinking. Learners are able to think in the farm. Communication and collaboration will be also identified during this visit to the farm. Learners will have to develop what they call environmental conservation, because they're in the farm. When they leave, the place should be clean and they should not destroy any plant or any animal. Learners also will have to learn about animal welfare, because as they're in the farm, they're able to maybe feed some animals. Learners also will have to develop what they call safety. Remember, when they're moving near the animal, they have to observe so that they're not injured by some animals, like I said, maybe a donkey, a camel, or a dog. These learners also, still on the competencies, will develop what we call imagination and creativity, because they're now drawing and even imagining how those animals are able to stay. Then last, which is very important, under competencies is digital literacy, because they were able to take pictures of either the type of food, type of animal, and the type of house of each animal. Also, learners will have to develop what we call values. CB is very important to have values, because we need to have a set whereby after learning, learners are able to suit in a society. So when they went outside, which values did they develop? 1 is respect, because they were moving in groups. They were listening to the farm managers. That's respect. Next one, unity. They were able to take pictures, to draw, and even classify in groups. That's unity. Next one, they were able to have to show what we call responsibility. They were able to carry their items, to draw, and do whatever they were told. Lastly, under values, you have what we call cooperation. They were able to cooperate with the farm managers, the teacher, and even the leaders in their groups. Lastly, as I summarize, subjects that can be linked to this, what I said earlier, but let me just summarize them. 1 is what we call agriculture to this visit. 2, art and craft will also link to this. Next one, home science. Then lastly, English and Swahili, not forgetting mathematics. Thank you very much. I wish you well, as we hope you will follow that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vitalis, for taking us through how to create an authentic assessment task. Kindly, I request you to close your slide so that we can see what we can read the charts.
Okay.
From what Vitalis has said, and as we expect to take our learners through assessment, summative assessment. Basically, summative assessments are based on scenarios. When you look at the various substrands, there is usually an outcome, a specific learning outcome that is skill-based. And that skill-based outcome forms the core of an authentic task. And you have to put your task in a scenario, a real-life scenario that learners can do practically and participate in them. So basically, that is all about authentic tasks or summative assessment tools that teachers can use to assess how learning took place, how much the learners retained, how much the learners can do as far as skill assessment is concerned. Now, at this juncture, I want us to look at a few questions that our teachers have asked. Irene is still asking. She's so much, she has a lot of passion with learners with special needs, and she's asking, she's giving an example of the Thika School for the Blind. How can the totally blind learners observe, okay, the change in the litmus paper and so on? She's saying that these learners, they still do the same exam. But I want to just to inform these audience that learners with adverse special needs are usually given, this curriculum design is usually customized. It is, we call them adopted to suit their needs. So the curriculum design that the conventional learners use is not the same one as the learners with the special needs, advanced special needs use. It is usually adopted to suit their needs. So there, I am sure the learners in the Thika School for the Blind, they use their own curriculum design. And assessment, I'm very much convinced that they will not be asked to assess whether the blue litmus paper turns red in acid and so on. No, that cannot happen, because even the examiner knows that these learners do not have the sense of sight. Again, there is a teacher here asking whether we can organize for such workshops at the grassroots level. Yes, Mr. This is a teacher. I can call him Jackson from Mwingi. When the COVID situation improves in the country, we shall be able to interact face to face. Let me open another section of questions. Someone is asking whether we have the grade 6 approved books ready. Yeah, these books will be ready before end of third term. You will receive them in third term. At the moment, they're still being corrected by KICD and ourselves. So by the time we open in third term, we shall have the books ready. Now, I would like to invite my colleague, Mr. Lijodi. Lijodi, are you there?
I'm there. I'm
yes.
there.
Yes. Kindly, Lijodi, I'm giving you a few minutes to talk to our teachers about what you do as far as ensuring that the Moran published books, Moran Primary Science and Technology, and other books that we publish reach our teachers, how they can get them, and how they can use them, how they can interact and collaborate with us in many other areas. So Lijodi, I'm giving you the floor.
Asante. Thank you, Naima. And let me take this early opportunity to appreciate our facilitators for the day and for your coordination of this webinar. From the comments from the teachers, I can see there was a lot of learning and relearning. And I believe Moran Publishers, as we continue to interact with the teachers, our intention is to make you teachers better, so that science is an interesting learning area, so that we can develop and bring about engineers for the future of this country. Moran Publishers, as Naima has put it, I'm in charge of sales and marketing, and with a team of sales representatives across the country. And our intention is to make sure that you interact with our products on the ground, so that you can make wise decisions when you select books that you use in teaching and also in assessing your learners, so that you are able to mitigate where there's need. So from Moran Publishers, very quickly, we have our science course book for grade 4 is here, Moran Science and Technology. This is a book that also was supplied to all the government schools in the country. And when you use this book, you'll find that this book enables learners to interact with the environment for effective learning. When you use Moran Science and Technology, again, you'll find examples that can be used in developing digital literacy skills used for the gadgets safely. When you use our Moran Science and Technology, we have provided projects for discovery in line with the SLOs in the design. The book stimulates scientific inquiry through activities that require critical thinking, problem solving, giving the skills for a lifelong learning. So I would wish and I would want to request that you find a way of reaching out to our sales team or reaching out to us so that you can have an interaction, one-on-one interaction with our Moran Science and Technology for grade 4. We have projects that involve parents in this book. And then when you look at page 14, included assessment exercise. So after every strand in our Moran Science and Technology, you will find an assessment exercise that you can give to your learners as a teacher to gauge whether they understood the whole strand. What is the purpose of student assessment in the competency-based education system? We have been taken through assessment, and teachers, you'll agree with us that competency-based assessment is key and provides insight in what the student knows, still needs to learn, has learned, and where the institution can improve. This is very critical. Assessments must also allow students to demonstrate behaviors and thought processes reflected in the competencies. So we've been taken through all this. We understand why it is critical to have assessments. And as a company, we have our Moran Grade 4 workbook, CBC Breakthrough Workbook. And this workbook, when you go through it, you'll find that it has fun-filled activities to develop learners' competencies. We have put there extended work for individual practice and to develop value and competencies. We have activities that can be done collaboratively. In our Grade 4 workbook, it addresses all the SLOs in an orderly manner for convenient issuance of extended work. Teacher is able to effectively assess the learner's understanding of strands and substrands. And then in our Grade 4 workbooks again, we can find that we have activities that enable parental engagement. And then lastly, parents can track their children's progress through the work that we give and they take home. If you look at the Grade 4 workbook, the volume 2, Mwalimu Vitalis has shown us the authentic tasks that is there. We have an integrated authentic task in our Grade 4 workbook. We also have projects that the learners can undertake with you. We have assessment after every strand and substrand. So this enables us to give the learners an opportunity to do these projects. Before we wait for the next project to come, let us use our books with the projects that are there so that the learners can get used to projects. When the next project comes, it's not something that causes tension in the school and with your parents and with the learners. So let's keep doing these projects progressively with our learners. And the only books in the market with these projects are the CBC Breakthrough Workbooks by Moran Publishers. We have volume 1. Volume 1 has mathematics and the languages. We have volume 2 that has science, agriculture, social, and home science. Then we have our volume 3 that has the religious and art and craft and music. So I would request you teachers to look at these books in the bookshops around you and interact further with them. Grade 5 course book for Moran is the Master Science and Technology, an interesting course. And Vitalis is one of our authors there. It has simple language to the learners and appropriate illustrations and photographs, a variety of learner-centered activities, including community service learning activities. And when you look at the book, it instills acquisition of the necessary skills and attitudes and values. All the specific learning outcomes have been captured, activities that are interesting to the learner, The book stimulates scientific inquiry through activities that require critical thinking and problem solving, giving the skills for lifelong learning. So this is a book that I would encourage you also to get a copy and look at it. It has a corresponding teacher's guide that will give you a variety of activities and how to go about your lessons. Grade 5 breakthrough workbook, again, we have done per learning area. And if you look at the breakthrough workbook for science, again, done by one of our facilitators here, you find that it has fun-filled activities to develop learner competencies, extended work for individual practice to develop values and competencies, activities that can be done collaboratively. It addresses all the SLOs in an orderly manner for convenient issuance of extended work. The teacher is able to effectively assess the learner's understanding of strands and substrands, and then it has take-home activities that enhance parental engagement. Parents can also track their children's progress as you issue this extended work that can be done at home. So when you look at this science, it is very unique. If you compare with what is in the market, you'll find that we are putting reminders to our students so that they can be able to reflect back on what has been taught through point to note. So point to note is a reminder of what is key in a strand. We have challenging activities that require critical thinking and problem solving. We have used examples that enhance digital usage of gadgets. We have assessment exercise that comes after every strand. An example is on page 90. So after every strand, we have an assessment exercise that the learners will undertake, and you as a teacher, you'll be able to gauge whether you need to reinforce some of the teachings that you've undertaken. And then we also have this topic of coding that seems to be a challenge. When we move to schools, we have realized that teachers will raise an issue on coding. And if you look at our book here, we have given you enough exercises that the learners can be engaged in to demystify this topic that seems to be a challenge. Mwalimu talked about acids and bases. If you look at page 66 again, you'll find that we have given you enough activities that you can undertake with the learners, and these activities can be done inside our workbook. And by doing so, as a teacher, you are able to measure whether your learners are understanding your lessons and the activities that you're giving to them, so that you can also give mitigation where it is needed. So that is our grade 5 workbooks that we have published and now available in the market. You can see mathematics, Kiswahili, we can see English, science and technology, CRE, art and craft, agriculture, home science, social studies, music, and not forgetting, we have also done IRE. So our teachers who teach IRE out there, we have IRE Breakthrough Workbook, the only revision book in IRE in the market. So you can reach us through our info@moranpublishers.co.ke. If you would wish us to come to your school, you can just write to us, location of the school, your name and the phone number, so that we can call and get the location of your school. You can also reach me on my number there, so that I can coordinate how we can reach you in the fastest way. And let me take this opportunity again to thank you all for your time, for joining us. Our grade 6 science is almost ready, as Naima has put it, and I'm sure this course is going to be very interesting to you as you wait and prepare for your book list for the transition of your learners to the next class. Don't forget that Moran Publishers is approved in science and technology in grade 4, 5, and 6. And our workbooks are there also for you so that you can recommend them to parents to use in the continuous assessment of your learners. Thank you very much for joining us, and we appreciate your time, and pass our regards to everyone out there. Thank you. Back to you, Naima.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey Lijodi, for talking to our teachers. And I'm sure our teachers have heard you and they're going to get in touch with us using the email address you've given them and the telephone number you've given them. I can see our teachers still have so many questions, and Isaiah is still on my case concerning the learners with the special needs. But what I would like to advise all the teachers here is that our teachers' guides give clear guidance on how to handle these special needs, depending on the activity at hand. So when you use Moran Teachers Guides, you will get to know how do you handle a learner with the visual impairment. When you are doing a hands-on activity, how do you handle a learner with the hearing impairment? When you are doing an audio activity and so on. So I would like us to stop that discussion there, but I know it is not the end. Keep talking to us. Let us know what you would like us to address next time we are having a science and technology a webinar or a workshop with you so that we can address your needs. Please send in your needs as far as science and technology is concerned on the email address that I gave you, info@moranpublishers.co.ke. The same one has been given to you by Lijodi. At this juncture, I would like us to end this session. I've seen that you have shared your email addresses, and we shall send you the slides on Monday or Tuesday. So we'll keep your word, and if you don't see the slide coming to your email, most probably your email might have been swamped by the many communications. Just talk to us and remind us so that we can share, because we have made a promise and we are people of integrity. So I would like to thank you all, the panelists that have spoken to our audience. Thank you, Mr. Vitalis. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. Naomi, thank you. Thank you so much, Geoffrey, for being there for us. I also want to appreciate all the teachers who attended this workshop. We know you had so many things to do. We have very short terms and busy timetables, but out of all that, you heed to our invitation and attended this workshop. We really value your participation and your coming to support us this far. We know that there are schools that have set up computers and asked their teachers to sit around those computers to listen to us. Thank you so much, school administrators that have made these workshops to be part of your school activities, and for inviting your teachers to come and collaborate with us as far as this is concerned. I would also want to thank Moran Publishers, the management and administration of Moran Publishers that have made this webinar and many other webinars we have had successful. We really appreciate your support towards this. Our ICT manager is behind the Moran brand you can see, and he's worked very hard to make sure that this webinar is a success. So thank you so much. And I would really love that when we call you next, you shall be part of us. I've been your host, Naima Kasim, and I would love to wish you all the best in your teaching as we make lives, as we sharpen the brains of young children, as we serve our communities, and as we serve God through this calling of being a teacher and being a publisher. God bless you so much. Remember, Moran Publishers is offering you CBC Breakthrough Workbook. Lijodi Geoffrey is bidding you goodbye and asking you to recommend CBC Breakthrough Workbooks for grade 5, even as you make your book list for the next level. God bless you. From Moran Publishers here at Judah Complex, we wish you all the best. Goodbye for now. ICT, just a moment, we harvest the contacts.